In today's episode, we're discussing diversity in the legal industry with Michelle Spirn. Welcome to the Law Firm Launch Podcast.
Welcome to the Law Firm Launch Podcast. I'm glad our listeners are tuning in today because I know it's going to be a treat. I'm going to be speaking with my friend and client, Michelle Spirn. Michelle, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. I know your time is very valuable, and so I appreciate not just your time, but also just what you have to share, because you've built a very successful firm, and I think you have a lot of good things to share that lawyers can learn from. So I would love for you to just tell us a little bit about your firm, and then we'll jump into talking a little bit more.
Sure. Well, hi, Jaimee. Thank you so much for letting me be here today. I'm thrilled to be here. So I am a divorce lawyer in Clayton. I started my own firm, Spirn Family Law, at the very end of 2017. So I've been doing that for about 3.5 years. And I now have 2 lawyers working for me and a paralegal and an assistant. So, and we are busy, like almost hard. It's hard to keep up. Whether it's COVID, I'm not sure what's going on, something in the water, but we're pretty much nonstop here. I went to WashU Law School. I graduated in 96, and I have always been a divorce lawyer. I mean, I have family law, which is sort of like the nicer way of putting it. But really, I mean, we're divorce lawyers. I mean, that's what we do.
Right.
So I started my career at a small firm, which merged into a bigger firm. I was at a bigger firm. I'm on my own now for the second time. The first time it really was me just completely solo, then joined a medium-sized firm again, was a partner there, and now I'm doing this, and I think this is pretty much going to be it.
Found your niche here.
Yes.
Well, you've definitely, I think, caught some sort of stride here, which I can't wait to dig in and talk to you a little bit about. This topic of women in legal has been, ongoing for a long time amongst us, right? Those that are in the industry, but it's becoming sort of more and more talked about as more statistics are coming out. And we've got this whole diversity series going within our podcast where we're talking to people of color and women in our industry, mainly because the statistics are 50% of our industry is made up of men lawyers, 50% is made up of women lawyers, and yet we still have this disparity of women in leadership, right, within the legal industry.
For sure.
So we've seen a lot more women sort of going out on their own, just hanging up their own shingle, or even just joining smaller firms to try to find more opportunity. And I would love for you to talk about, just as a female lawyer, a woman in the legal industry that's been in here for a while, and maybe I'd love you to share an experience that really impacted you. And that could be a positive experience, a negative experience, or maybe it was a man that impacted you for positive. So was there sort of one experience or maybe even 2 that you could share that were really impactful for you?
Sure. I can give you 2 smaller ones and then a big one. Okay. So the 2 smaller are negative, but they're humorous, or at least I take them as humorous. So when I was a very young attorney, and it really was at that time completely male, the field was male dominated. Almost all male judges, almost all older male attorneys. So you know how that is. It's hard sometimes to be taken seriously. And I'm this young woman, all earnest with my briefcase, all serious. So I had a court appearance with an attorney who is still practicing, so I will not say her name, an older woman. I mean, when I say older than me, so about 20 years older than me. And we had this very polite court appearance. And then when we were finished and walking to our cars, she asked if she could give me a little bit of advice. And I said, sure, I would love that. And she said something along the lines of, you're a very smart girl. You're a very smart girl, but you're going to need to learn to be a lot more of a bitch if you want to be successful in this business. And that really struck me at the time as just wrong. And it didn't feel true to me and to who I am. And I've never thought that you need to be a bitch to be successful. And I have, I think, proven that to be true. I think you just need to be who you are. Maybe if who you are is really bitchy and that works for you, then great. But it's just not who I am. So I think it's more important to be who you are. And then similarly, around the same time, very early in my career, I was in court, and had an older male judge, and this is where the judges were at that time, all older guys, and I was there representing a male client, ask me if I was the court reporter and I could just go sit over there, honey. And I told him I was the attorney for the petitioner, and he was horrified and very embarrassed and apologized profusely. I'm not sure what would make him think I was the court reporter, because I was clearly dressed like a lawyer, had the briefcase. I was convinced the briefcase was like everything at that
You probably even had shoulder pads.
I did. It was the 90s. It was like the late 90s. I had shoulder pads. I had my hair all, I was, lawyering it up like Ally McBeal. So I'm not sure where that came from, but that happened. Like that, and that those are just two sort of examples. I mean, that was not an uncommon thing to happen, certainly in my youth. And I don't know whether was the times, the late 90s or what. And I'll just say a good experience has really been making the decision to go out on my own and going out on my own, which has been an overwhelmingly positive experience. We are an all-female law firm, not by design, but it's just worked out that way.
Sure.
We have I think, wonderfully supportive environment here. So it has been, though, a learning curve and a learning experience. And just as an example, and I still think, even though we have progressed so much in the world, there are still, like you said, there's still just a dearth of women in leadership positions. So when I started my firm, and I was, of course, overwhelmed with just the number of things to do and get started, I was still at my old firm, and I hadn't told him I was leaving yet, so it was very stressful. And my husband, who was incredibly supportive, very sweetly offered to take, he said, what can I do to make this easier for you? Can I take something over? And I said, you know what, the whole insurance piece, malpractice insurance, workers' comp, liability insurance, the whole nine, that is just, I can't even get my head around it. Would you just take that over for me? And he was like, happy to, done. So he engaged an insurance broker, and he got it all taken care of.
Oh.
I will say that the process, though, of engaging the broker, to this day, we had several meetings with the insurance broker, just deciding, what malpractice levels, et cetera, made sense. And he would not look at me. And he addressed all of his comments to my husband, and who went out of his way to say, Spirn family law is her. It's not me. I'm just here for moral support, helping out. It's not me. And the guy was kind of like, yeah. And just kept, and to date, this guy does not talk to me. He's still my insurance agent, and I have good insurance, and I just don't even talk to him that much. So I don't really care anymore. There were some things like that, which it seems ridiculous would happen now, but which still.
We'll talk a little bit about, even if it's just, a minute or two, but how those experiences have shaped how you have created your own culture in your firm today.
Yeah, I have really I think you have to just bypass it and smile politely. At least I am not someone who's going to unnecessarily confront people, which is weird given what I do, but I just smile and move past it. And I think
you have to do enough of that, right? It's
right. I save my energy. I'm not going to lecture anybody. I deal with that all day I do that with judges and clients, not lecturing, but arguing. I just don't need it. And so really it's just, I think, setting a value structure and a paradigm here at the firm where let's just focus on what's important, and let's just be ourselves and ignore people. You just have to ignore them and just move them out of the way and keep going to get where you want to be.
I'm glad you shared those experiences, because I've been trying to make this hashtag trend on LinkedIn called No Assholes Allowed.
Yep. Hashtag
No Assholes Allowed. And I think it's going to take maybe a couple of years to gain traction, but there is even just the industry in general, right? I mean, the American perception of lawyers is that, we don't care. I'm not a lawyer, but, lawyers in the industry, they don't care about people, which is crazy to me, because all of our clients are small to mid-sized firms that they care about their clients probably too much, right? They sacrifice their own personal lives. They sacrifice their financial income so that they can serve the clients better. But there is this perception that lawyers only care about money and don't care about people or the clients. and that comes from somewhere. And I think that there are, right, those people out there that have sort of that edge to them or whatever, but there are so many fabulous lawyers that are true to themselves and have started these firms because they want to create a culture that's different and that stands out, in which people want to work. And gone are the days where people won't work for assholes anymore. I mean, they just won't. They've got options,
Well,
you know?
what? That's first of all maybe my new logo. No assholes hashtag. I feel that. I mean, that's absolutely right. When at my prior firm where I was most recently, I was a partner. I was the only female partner. And again, it's hard to attribute this to being the only female partner. It could have just been the dynamics among these people. But I felt like I was always pushing uphill for everything that I wanted. Wow. And it just, everything was a struggle. I mean, moving into a bigger office was like this big deal.
Oh, right.
And I felt that also the way that staff were treated was not the way that I think staff should be treated. I mean, my people keep me afloat. I mean, they are why I am here. I'm blessed with a wonderful group. Hashtag blessed.
Yes. There we go.
I'm not joking that they're wonderful people.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that I make a point of treating them the way that, commensurate with their value to me.
I'm glad you really brought that up, because there is a little bit of a gap or chasm a lot of times between lawyers and staff. And I was just with a new client in Central Illinois, and I got inspired as I was watching them all talk to each other, the lawyers and the staff. I was like, I feel like I need to write a blog that's, why do we measure law firms on number of lawyers and not actual quality of legal staff? Because it's the staff that really makes the world go round in a law firm. And so I'm glad you brought that up, because I think, the next thing I sort of want to ask you is about what are some of your, go-to resources within your firm, because you have built something successful. And once you touch on that, I want to hear what are your best pieces of advice for lawyers that might want to be starting their own firm. And that point of caring for your staff and valuing them in the same way you value yourself, I think is huge. So, maybe start with what are some of your go-to resources that have helped you be successful in your firm?
Well, I guess I think a couple of things. I was going to say, first of all, my largest go-to resource is my own staff. They make me look good. They're there and they take care of me. I mean, that's just the bottom line. In return, when things go well, I make a point of sort of sharing it, and it's a group effort. And if things don't go so well, that's on me. My name's on the door, and it doesn't really matter whose fault it is. At the end of the day, it's my fault. So my staff, and I think just giving them a voice and letting them chime in. I mean, if something needs to be done better, or there's another better way to organize something, or I just don't have my head on straight about the way the law is supposed to be, I try to keep an environment that's open where people can come to me and say, I disagree, or maybe we should try it this way. Another huge resource for me has been this group of, and it's funny, but women attorneys. It just, I think so happens that they're women. This brain trust that I have, that we text and call all the time, some of them in larger firms, some of them solos, some of them in medium-sized firms, but all of whom are great friends and who have great input and ideas for everything from substantive legal questions to oh my God, does this dress look good? Or is this okay for court?
I love it.
They are a go-to.
That's awesome. That's really awesome. What about, so I love that, because I did another podcast recording actually earlier today, and the theme was sort of how important other lawyers are in your journey. So I love that sort of you brought that up too. We really do need other people to be successful, and that's your internal people, and being open to them telling you, hey, maybe we should think about this differently, as well as sort of having that informal board of directors, right? / friends, right? We say that all the time. We want our clients to like us and trust us. We really want our clients to be friends, because we're in this together, and we're going through stressful times and we're going through successful times, but we are a team. So I love that you shared that. It might be hard, but I'd like you to pick let's say one or two. So you can go to two if you can't pick just one, but for not just new lawyers, but for lawyers that are thinking of starting up on their own, or maybe they just started, this is the Law Firm Launch podcast. So we're trying to help lawyers that are either thinking of starting or just started, or even ones that maybe they've plateaued and they're looking to grow a little bit. If you could point to like one reason why you've been successful, or like your biggest piece of advice or your two biggest pieces of advice, what would those be for lawyers in those scenarios?
I think it is so important to learn the business side and be familiar with the numbers and have a really solid sense of what your overhead is going to be, what your billable rates are going to be, what your, where you want to be in terms of if you're going to have a staff, what you're going to pay them, just a really hands-on sense of what the numbers are. I didn't as much. I learned fast, and it was a really steep learning curve. And I have other people doing that for me now, as you know, and thank God for that. But it really gave me a great sort of, I had this business model in my head of where I wanted to be, but having a facility with the numbers and understanding what things cost you really can't delegate that. I think at the outset, you have to have a firm understanding yourself. That would be my best piece of advice.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because I do, I've mentioned this before, that a lot of times when lawyers are starting up their own firm, I think they're running away from something instead of running to something. And there is sort of an underestimation of what it requires as a business person, right? To make your business successful. And, I hear it all the time from lawyers. I learned how to be a lawyer, but I never learned how to run a company. I never learned anything about business in law school. And yet the industry, maybe without even realizing it from a law school perspective, a majority of our industry are business owners.
Oh, yeah.
And in entrepreneurship. So I'm also still advocating for like a required like business 101 class to be a part of law degrees now, because I think so many lawyers are going into business ownership and could be experiencing far greater success, right? And it doesn't mean you have to have your MBA, but there are some good business best practices that I think are critical.
100%. I had never run a profit and loss statement. And it's like, I have clients who are obviously in business. I had an understanding, and what turns out, I think, was sort of a surface understanding of what they did and what that meant. But having to do it myself, that took me really, that took a lot. And it was a steep learning curve, but I have a far better sense now of where I am and where I'm going.
That's awesome. That's really cool. Well, I think there have been some really cool nuggets of what you've shared today that I've sort of pulled out. And I love this theme of just like how important humanity is to our own success as an individual. And that's through your other lawyers, through your staff, through your peers. And I just love that, because it's sort of tying this nice little bow on the advice is really, we need people. We need other people to be successful. And I think that's a really cool theme.
No one does it by themselves, for sure.
Yep, absolutely. Well, I'm so glad that you came on today. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. Like I said, even more valuable than your time is what you have to share. I'm really proud of what Spirn Family Law has built. And now you're officially now one of my no assholes allowed disciples. We're going to get it out there, man.
I'm all over it. Thank you so much for having me, Jaimee. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Michelle.
Thanks for tuning in today. Be sure to hit subscribe or go to legalbackoffice.com for more info.